So talking about these different voices and like different qualities of the different phases, um, I've noticed how I mentioned the inner critic earlier, like how the inner critic can, or our intuition can sound different in different phases of the cycle. And I'm wondering if you have a way of using journaling to like work with these inner voices and meet them with more
Mm.
compassion or clarity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that journaling is a great way to meet these voices. I like that way you've put it. So one of my teachers, Alexandra Pope, talks about the premenstrual phase being the natural home of the inner critic. So the critical voice that we all have is completely normal and a healthy thing to have. Does have a place, right? It can often actually really point out when things aren't working so well for us, and that there's stuff that we might want to consider or reassess in our lives. But it has a tendency to turn the volume way up and to just dominate other voices and to become quite personal. So the critic has a tendency to, instead of I can use a recent example. I was really struggling to get my taxes in on time again, this end of this January. It's like 31st of January every year. I always leave it to the last minute. And I think to myself, Claire, just get it done earlier. Why do you leave this till the last minute? So it's this like stress time with my accountant. Um, so the critic, rather than just saying like, hey, maybe next year you could schedule in November, like let's get taxes started. It's you're unreliable, you're disorganized, you're a terrible business owner. I can't believe you've done this again. Why haven't you learned? Like it's just so cruel and it becomes personal. So it's not just about a behavior that I could definitely work on changing. It's like me as a human being. I'm wrong. I'm not worthy. I'm a failure. Right. You get what I'm trying to say. And I find that journaling is a really great way, with that awareness in mind, to catch the inner critic out when it starts to get really personal. Because again, we slow things right down. And so when I'm journaling and I'm noticing these thoughts and feeling like this and I'm frustrated and I let the frustrations out, I can just begin to slow it down and start to see, okay, like where is this voice getting personal? What's actually true here? Is it true that I'm a terrible business owner? No, it's not. That's not true. Is it true that I'm not worthy? That's not also not true. But like what is true here? There's probably something in here that I could listen to, right? Okay, what might that be? What could I do to support myself to actually make this change? And so it's just really slowly breaking it down that way. And something that, again, Alexandra Pope talks about is sending the critic home in your menstrual cycle to that autumn phase. So if you notice those voices becoming really loud when you're bleeding or when you're in the pre-ovulatory phase or the ovulatory phase, her recommendation is actually to send that voice to the premenstruum to say, listen, I'm bleeding right now. I'm really sensitive. Like I'm in a vulnerable place and this is like my like loving home. I want to care for my body, my mind and my heart right now. Like we're not getting into it. We're not going to get into it. Like we will, but let's make a date for a few weeks time. Same for the pre-ovulatory phase. Same for ovulation. Like those phases are not about reflecting and discerning. It's the natural home of that reflective week. So I like that advice. I think it's not always so easy to follow, but I do try to do that, to say, okay, I'm in my autumn. What do we need to look at? And kind of get into it. But I am really protective of that menstrual week. When I notice that inner critic voice coming up, I really try to just like buffer up those other voices, the cheerleader, the crone, like that beautiful wise archetype of menstruation, like that crone that's just like, this is who cares about your tax? Whatever, it's fine. Like it's not in the scheme of your life. Like you're good. Like that's tuning into those other voices. I think it's helpful to have that permission slip that like that's not where the critic belongs. There are other voices that we can amplify. And I think journaling is such an amazing way to be able to give like pass the mic, I suppose, to those other voices to become louder.
Yeah. Um, the the teaching that Alexandra and Shani from Red School gave around the inner critic was really life-changing for me. Um, when I started to work with the inner critic in that way, like creating these really clear boundaries around when it was welcome and when it wasn't welcome. And then I was actually using that dialoguing technique then to work with it actively in the premenstrual phase. It just changed my life. Like I was going through these inner critic attacks, and I at the time I wasn't really aware of where it was happening in my cycle, but my suspicion is that it was always often happening in my pre-ovulatory phase, where I was really vulnerable, because I feel like that's a really vulnerable part of the cycle for me. And I would just crumble, like I would become paralyzed. I just like it totally was preventing me from living my life, and really like it's just shattering my self-worth. And when I started to work with the inner critic in the way that you're describing, well, very quickly, I just became much better at recognizing that voice when it became active. Like even just the first few words, it's like, ah, that's the inner critic. And okay, wait, I'll speak to you when I'm ready. And then when I started to dialogue with it on the page, then we could start to get to this constructive place of digging beneath the insults and the general blanket statements about how rubbish I was, to, yeah, like, okay, so what you're really saying is da 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 da, and okay, I could do this maybe, or yeah, that's okay, but I'm happy where I am, or whatever. So yeah, I just want to like recognize, acknowledge what a powerful practice that has been for me. And I know, having worked with others with the inner critic, how transformational it can be.